The temporary procedures.
Absolutely, Chair. The San Benito County Planning Commission welcomes your comments. Each individual speaker will be limited to a presentation total of 3 minutes. When addressing the commission via Zoom, phone, or in chambers, please state your name and county in which you reside for the record. Please address the commission as a whole through the chair. If participating via Zoom, select the Participants tab and click the Raise Hand icon. If you are using a phone, please press *9 to raise your hand. When your turn arrives, you will hear that you have been unmuted. If you are participating in person at the chambers, please complete a speaker card identifying the item on which you wish to speak and provide your completed comment card to the clerk prior to consideration of the item. Speaker cards are available on the table at the entrance to the chambers. Thank you.
Thank you. If we could have the Pledge of Allegiance. Commissioner Toledo, please lead us in the pledge.
Absolutely.
Ready? Salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. If we could have a roll call, please.
Absolutely. District 1, Vincent Ringhayden.
Present.
District 2, Richard Way.
Present.
District 3, Robert Scaliotti.
Present.
District 4, Robert Gibson.
Present.
District 5, Celeste Toledo Bocanegra.
Present.
All commissioners are present.
Thank you. Can I get an acknowledgement of the certificate of posting, please?
Also move.
All second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? None. Motion carries 5-0. Consent agenda. Very good. Consent agenda. Are there any additions or changes to the minutes? Seeing none, is there a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I motion we adopt the consent agenda.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Now, even though this is a special meeting, we're not having our regular meeting next week. So we will be taking public comment at this time. It is limited to 3 minutes. If you could please pull the first public speaking card.
Barry Katz, you may approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes.
Good evening and happy holidays to y'all. So I'm here to talk about the usual topic for me, the landfill expansion. And as we've all noted from all these previous sessions, the EIR details quite a few negative impacts which need, I guess that's at your discretion, and then later to the Board of Supervisors to weigh the negative impacts against the potential financial gain or other gain for the county. Those include, the negative impacts include increased traffic, air pollution, noise, odor, which has become a real problem at Marina next to their landfill. They're doing a study here. They're like 10 years into their landfill, and now they're studying and finding, yes, there's an odor problem. Also the potential risk for increased risk for groundwater contamination. And then also just the visual impact of this big mountain of trash sticking up above all the hills in front of it, which will be basically making Hollister the gateway to the mega dump instead of the gateway to the Pinnacles. But most importantly, what I wanted to say is it's become so clear in my conversations with so many people about this. There are very, very few people in this county who support this. And a great many, the great majority of people in this county are against this measure. This is not a property rights thing because they don't want to keep the dump. I mean, they don't want to keep the property. They want the county to take over the property. So this is a contract between the county and a contractor. So we don't have any property rights issues. They have no rights in particular. It's just, do the benefits make sense for the county to engage in this? And clearly the voters are saying no. They do not want this. So I would urge that you only approve as minimal an expansion as necessary to have a landfill for our county only, in-county trash only. Let's cover the next 50 years or more. That's a great idea. We should see some progress during that time, though, at reduction and reuse and that sort of thing, so that it shouldn't take that much to give us 50 years. Also, most importantly, is to keep the height down. Don't go up another 29 feet higher and open it up, because right now these ladies in Santana Ranch can see it really well, but a lot of other places it's behind the hills. And if you start going higher and higher, you're going to see it everywhere on the east side of Hollister and down the highway. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Bridget Bowman Thorpe, please approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes, sorry.
Hi, good evening, and happy holidays to everybody. My name is Bridget Bowman Thorpe. I hope we probably won't see each other until the January 31st, which will be the big day where you will make the decision on the landfill expansion and the tonnage on the haul route and the CUP. And I just here to remind you, you have to make a statement of overriding considerations. Balance unavoidable risks of a project against economic, legal, social, technological, and other benefits of the project. Again, you will approve, hopefully not approve, the whole route. The whole route is Highway 25. 25, again, is a 2-lane major road, and it will go through town. It will go by Safeway, by the hospital, by Richmark. By the way, there's a stop sign. Can you imagine 150 to 180 dump trucks, semi-trucks, who are hauling 20 tons of garbage, stopping at a stop sign at Richmark, and then going to Best Road? By the way, you do the same thing in return. They're going to leave the landfill, coming Best Road to by Richmark. This is this should be studied. There should be a traffic impact. They have not studied that that whole route, and plus we have a turbo roundabout that has not been in the study also. And I just want to remind everybody on the current traffic volumes and speeds, 42-3, State Route 25, current volumes are 29,500 vehicles. And if you add 150 to 180, you have a caravan of dump trucks coming through this town. And like I said, this needs to be studied. This is incomprehensible. It will be causes, the diesel trucks cause air pollution, and people will notice these dump trucks. When you drive into Hollister, you will see those dump trucks, and people will think, what is going on in this town? And Hollister will be known as the trash town, period. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Maureen Nelson, please approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes.
If there are any additional speakers, please bring your cards forward.
Good evening. My name's Maureen Nelson. Thank you for the opportunity. I'm going to be a little off target here, but I need to say this before I forget this and lose it on my phone. Presented by our own county, the impact of heavy loads on our roads. And it was a comparative vehicle pavement stress. And it states that a 5-axle loaded truck is equivalent to 14,708 Blazer S10 vehicles. One truck. Think about how much trash is coming into our county and what's proposed and how many trucks that will be and the wear and tear on our roads. Okay, moving on. Living in the shadow of leaky landfills just recently came out. This was from 12/5. It's about landfills in Southern California. This landfill that is having issues with obnoxious odors, leaking, is also run by Waste Connections. I'm not saying that they're the perpetrator. I'm just saying that I find it coincidental that here we are with an issue of 2 landfills in Southern California. The Chiquita Canyon landfill and the Sunshine Canyon landfill. They've suffered water intrusion from torrential storms. What did we have last year and what are we expected with this year? Torrential storms. It goes through the soil and then it permeates into the waste and then it decomposes and bacteria forms. That growth is what's happening at the Sillamar landfill, giving rise to a putrid odors that have nauseated students and staff at the local colleges. It has impaired the pollution control systems, allowing toxic gases and polluted water to migrate into unwanted areas. These are all issues that we could eventually be dealing with. It could be happening after our rains this season that are projected for us again in an excessive rain period. They're getting 7,000 tons of trash a day. We're only looking at 2,300 tons, but we're also a much smaller community than the Simi Valley and their landfills. When there's high temperatures in those landfills, gas that can melt and deform the landfill's gas collection systems and components cause it to leak because they are a plastic component rather than a metal. What do we have in our landfills? I don't know. I haven't seen any documentation. I would guess that maybe the oldest part of our landfill has a plastic connections that melt away.
Thank you.
Thank you. Happy holidays.
To you as well. Any additional public comment in the gallery?
I don't see any more
Okay.
public comment in chambers. We have one public comment via Zoom. Mary Shah Karan, you have been unmuted. You will have 3 minutes.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak. I do want to echo what the previous speakers have said, that, you know, these are things that probably are not covered in the EIR. Other landfills, I think, are good lessons for our community. For example, the Crazy Horse Canyon landfill is actually pretty close to John Smith. It's, I think, about 17 miles west. It's in the north of Prunedale area. That is actually a EPA Superfund. And even though the EPA had required Monterey County and the city of Salinas, who were responsible, to put a lot of monitoring wells, I think they had like 40 some monitoring wells, it's still leaking. And it started in 1985 when it was detected. 1990 became a Superfund, but it looks like 2 miles away, more recently, people were finding their water contaminated, and there were many cases of cancer, people getting tumors, lots of, you know, health problems. So I just wanted to point out that these are things to consider. I think it's such a controversial issue that you might want to put this on the ballot. I think that there's a lot of strong feeling about this. I think that voters may want to weigh in on this because it impacts so many people on the haul route, for example, and also potentially whose water could get contaminated. That is actually, I think, a big risk. You know, the Sunny Slope Water District, I think, has like 2 wells that are near this dump, the John Smith landfill. So that is a risk area, and that supplies the water for many people in Hollister. So anyway, please think of perhaps putting this matter on the ballot. Thank you. Or recommending that to supervisors.
Thank you.
Thank
Any
you for your time.
Thank you. Any additional public comment via Zoom?
There is no more public comment via Zoom.
Okay, thank you. Public comment is closed. Regular agenda item 6.1.
Hi, good evening, Chair and fellow commissioners. So this had been a request from the commission to make a few changes on the Planning Commission procedures for transaction of business. So the first change was the removal of the title inspection for the Director of Planning and Building Inspection Services, and it just reads now as Planning and Building Services. The term secretary was replaced with clerk. And the request to move from packets and agendas being distributed no later than the Thursday prior to the scheduled meeting to now being put out on Wednesday prior to the scheduled meeting. The last, Fourth Amendment, reads as follow currently. If a recommendation is made by the Director of Planning and Building Services or the Chair of the Planning Commission that a regular meeting be canceled or changed, the Director of Planning and Building Services or the Chair may cancel the regular meeting or fix another time therefor. Notice of cancellation or change in a regular meeting time must be given at least 24 hours before the scheduled time of such meeting. We did have, per council, a few red line changes to that added text. So would now read, if a determination is made, the chair of the planning commission that a regular meeting be canceled or changed, the chair may cancel the regular meeting and fix another time therefor. Notice of cancellation or change in a regular meeting time must be available to the public at public noticing locations. Any questions?
Any questions from the commissioners? Commissioner Toledo?
Can I get that new one? I don't see it in my packet.
It is the,
Oh.
it's a PowerPoint.
It's the one down
and-
here. Thank you, I just saw it.
Okay.
Commissioner Way?
Yeah, kind of an observation. In the existing text, we have a 24-hour requirement for notification to the public, which strikes me as absurdly low. But in the new text, it's not even specified. So it seems worse in terms of notifying the public. Is there an intention to clarify that, to make it clearer that there needs to be some specific
I can speak
period?
to that. I just didn't, my suggestion was not to make it a requirement. You can, do it if you can, right? But not make it a strict requirement so that if you did have to cancel a meeting or thought to do so less than 24 hours, you could still do that. But you wouldn't have to notice necessarily, right?
Okay, can we add anything that would indicate that we would attempt to, well, I guess that wouldn't be in the bylaws.
I think
would
the
it?
best efforts would be to give as much notice as possible. I think
Right.
this is just if something were to happen
All
at the
right.
last minute, that there's still the option.
All right, fair enough.
We have to have a little faith in the people. If a recommendation is made, by shouldn't still be there. Not that I'm an English professor, but
Right, I'm not sure I struck that, but yes, yeah, by.
by
Right.
the chair. Okay,
I added it.
thank you. Commissioners Ringhayden,
I have one actual, another change on 3. Instead of saying expect, it should say accept in the amended text. Meetings shall be held per adopted meeting calendar, except as otherwise determined and noticed by the clerk.
Oh, yes.
On the second amendment?
Yep.
oh. I read it as, you know how your brain
It
automatically.
does, yeah, it fills that gap. but,
Yep.
yeah.
Okay.
Okay,
Made the change.
Right, there you go, right.
so is there a motion to adopt the changes with the grammatical correction of the word accept instead of expect, and then to adopt the county council's recommendation for the language of the Fourth Amendment, striking the need for the director of planning and building to be involved in that, and adding the word by, if a recommendation is made by the chair? Is there a motion to adopt those?
Determination made by the chair. I think we decided it was determination as opposed to recommendation.
Yes.
Yeah, it's if a determination is made. They corrected it on the slide
It-
that was
It's
presented.
up on the
but-
screen. If
Right.
CMAP goes
Okay.
to the screen, I can.
Determination, okay. If a determination is made by the chair of the planning commission, ...
Right.
Is there a motion to adopt these changes to the policies, the
I make a
procedures?
motion So we adopt these changes.
Okay, is there a second? Somebody?
I'll second.
Thank you. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you.
I edited it, yes. It's corrected, yes. And moving on, Steve Loop.
Good evening.
Good evening. No, it's yours. I think I have to activate it. Oh, they have it. So, thank you. All right, good evening, Chair, Commissioners, and members of the public. Per request from this commission, we'll be discussing an update on the Santana Ranch drainage pond status, and also we'll be providing some information on approved grading plans and where those might be located. So, first we're going to discuss county codes and policies regarding drainage. Then we're going to discuss the state water board permit that was specifically applied to the Santana Ranch development. And then we're going to finally discuss the Santana Ranch drainage pond status. So, county codes and policies. Our county code is standard, typical with most county codes. And what our county code says is two things. The allowable discharge for the developed area shall be limited to the 10-year event pre-development discharge, or the channel capacity that's being discharged into, if it's going right into a channel, whichever is the lesser. So to define a couple of those terms for everyone. Pre-development discharge. So before Santana Ranch or any other developments constructed, the engineers for the project have to look at the surface runoff characteristics prior to project construction. So, for example, there's ag land or hillsides, etc. And they calculate for a 10-year storm event how much runoff is being discharged based on those conditions. And that's the amount per our county code that can be discharged. Or if it's discharged straight into a channel, whichever is the lesser. Post-development is what we have to hold back because we're only allowed to discharge that first amount. And so we have to hold back the post-development surface runoff characteristics. After the project is constructed, you have a lot more impervious area, roads, roofs, impervious areas. So you can still release that amount, but only that maximum amount, just the size of that original straw, so to speak. Everything else has to be detained and then just released that smaller amount. So that's what our county codes say. The state water board issued a permit when the Santana Ranch development was constructed, or developed, I should say. And their permit, the state water board permit for this development, says that they shall replicate pre-project water balance, and for this permit defined as the volume of rainfall that ends up as runoff for the smallest storms up to the 85th percentile storm event. So what does that mean? They look at the engineers and they get information from NOAA and a lot of sources, and for the history of storms in our county, for 24 hours, they say, what is the first 85% of storms that occur? So some of the bigger, larger storms, those are kind of your last 15%. But that 85th percent, that's what their engineers have to calculate for pre-project runoff. So they take that storm event, they look at those same characteristics of hillsides, dirt, soil, and they say, okay, that's the runoff that you're allowed to release. and you have to mimic that storm for the permit, essentially. And so where we are today, and I'll go into more detail in a moment. So the developer and the State Water Board, they are seeing eye to eye. The developer's in compliance in 2 out of 3 basins for the state. They actually comply for 3 out of 3 with the county's requirements, but the county's requirements are perhaps, it can be viewed as not as stringent as the state requirements. And so for Basin A, which I'll show you in a moment, the developer is still not in compliance with this requirement. So where is that located? And what I'll do, I'll just talk about the 2 that are in compliance first. So down near Fairview Road, between Sunny Slope and Hillcrest on the east side, there's a long linear basin. That basin meets the requirements for both the state and the local requirements. And then Basin B, if you travel towards Hillcrest and you look towards your right, you'll see another basin. That's Basin B. That's also now in compliance as of a couple months ago. But however, if you head towards the middle of the project on the north side of the property, where we have the arrow there, that basin is still not in compliance with the state. And so the state has told the developer 3 things. 1, you need to provide us a conceptual plan to bring that basin into compliance by November, which they submitted a conceptual plan in November. Then after that, the state's reviewing the basin, and what the proposal is currently, there's a couple things submitted to the state. The current one that's being considered is to expand Basin A easterly and deepen it approximately 7 feet. So that's the current proposal that the state and the developer are working on together. If the state says, okay, conceptually we think this complies with your permit, then the next step is the developer has to submit 50% plans to the state, and about a month to do that. The state reviews, and then about another month after that, the developer has to provide 100% construction plans and a construction schedule, and the state will review and approve the construction schedule. So that's the status of the basins. One small note, the county, we actually requested that if they were going to expand Basin A, we requested the developer would kind of rotate that piece and make it a little bit more along the property line. But hydraulically, I guess it didn't work as well as we had hoped, and so it's just expanding along the limit of the basin. So, okay, grading plans. Upper right corner, or excuse me, the northeast corner, and these shapes are not exactly, but they're pretty close. So when the developer creates and submits and gets approved a tentative map, most developers also have rough grading plans included in their tentative map. So when they submit rough grading plans to be constructed, we look at the tentative map and we say, okay, yes, that pretty much complies with your tentative map grading, and we say, okay, you can grade, move dirt around, as long as you're not impacting neighbors and roads and things of that nature. And so, so at the northeast corner, there's a rough grading plan that's been approved. Down near Basin B, that is a half, I'll say roughly half commercial area near Fairview Road, and the other half, which is more easterly, is more homes. So the commercial area has not been approved for layout or design or things of that nature. It has been approved to move dirt around. The homes that are on the easterly part of that brown square area, the improvement plans have been approved, and which means they're allowed to construct the streets and the storm drain pipes and infrastructure and those type of things. So, so that's the status of the rough grading plans for the areas that are pretty much dirt at this point. And I'll pause for questions.
Commissioners have any questions, comments, concerns? Commissioner Toledo?
Are you allowed to tell us who the developer is?
Yeah, it's Anderson Homes.
Okay, I'm sorry, since I don't live in that area.
Yeah, and you're fairly new. Yeah, that's a fair question.
Also, okay, so yesterday, I believe it was yesterday, the supervisor board meeting, I heard something about the county paying for the expenses of the removal dirt maybe, or is it the fixing of what's happening to that development right now, Santana Ranch? Do you recall? So
What I
maybe-
might have said, but the county's actually not paying for it. So Santana Ranch gives the county drainage impact fees for each building permit that they pull. And so we put those fees in a fund, and we're actually using those fees we've installed 4 pipes along Fairview Road, and we're now cleaning out the ditch and making the ditch wider and operate more efficiently. So
Okay.
those weren't county funds, they're actually from the drainage funds. They were put into a county drainage fund, and maybe that's what you heard. And then,
Yeah, something
and then
like
we're using
that.
that fund for those
And
improvements.
since I'm still new at the transitioning with the funds and how, I just want to make sure everything's facts, right? So with that monies that we're receiving from them, the developers not spending any of their money to correct the error, since we're not at their, what do you say?
In compliance with the
in
permit?
compliance, yes.
No, the county's paying zero. They're submitting the plans, paying for the submittal of the design, expanding the basin if they're approved by the state board. The developer's paying 100% of all of the fixes or repairs to compliance with the permit. So.
Okay. I still have a misunderstanding maybe and questions on that, so I will hold off of that. And then have all the homes been sold, or is Anderson Homes still going to develop the rest of the homes, or you said they're at halt, they just have the permit for the moving of dirt, right?
Correct. So to clarify, at the northeast corner, we're not allowing any new homes to be built that would drain into Basin A until they're in compliance with that permit. Basin B is in compliance, and we just approved, like I said, there's, I want to say it's approximately 40, don't quote me on that, but there's homes that are going to be built on the east side of the commercial area near the Basin B down below. So I don't think they're building them yet. They have the improvement plans and the streets and the infrastructure approved, but they're probably going to be submitting permits for those homes to build for Basin B. So.
Is there a way that our county can restrict them from continuing any building for homes until they fix their errors?
Yes, we have actually, as far as I know, for the last 3 years, we have not allowed any homes to be built for Basin A. And Basin B, they're approximately, I don't know if it's third, a good percentage of the area that drained into Basin B was just dirt, and we didn't approve anything until just recently, a few months ago. But again, Basin B, it's in compliance, and so we're holding back all the permits and things for Basin A, which is not in compliance, if that's what your question is.
Okay, great. I will hold off for now. Thank you.
Okay.
Commissioner Way,
I'm good, thank you.
Commissioner Ringhaden,
I'd like to save my comments.
Commissioner Scaliotti.
Yes, one comment. If we had a winter like last year, are they gonna be able to hold that water 100%, or do we get drummed it again?
So all our codes, state codes, everybody's codes will not be able to handle 300-year storms back to back to back. And even if you think about the state permit, what they say is for the 85th percentile storm pre-development, they mimic that flow. So the state's even admitting, once you get into the large storms and the site is saturated, it will flow. I mean, unless you want the entire project to be a ginormous detention basin, like almost the whole project, there's no way you could hold back 300-year storms back to back to back.
But we could do better than a 10-year event, correct? Maybe 100?
Yeah, so we hold back the 100 and we just release the 10-year, if that's the question. But,
I think, yeah.
or are you asking to change the code perhaps?
Yes, correct. We've been asking for, what, 8 or 9 months? I'm hoping that we can get to that point.
So I
Whether
actually,
that's a resolution from us to the board, or whether we can handle that.
I actually received an email because probably the first time you asked me, believe it or not, I went to the state and I asked to update our permit so that these type of developments would have, our county codes would be more stringent, and then the rural areas would stay rural. And I actually received an email, I don't know if it was yesterday or the day before, from the state that said we're on the list to be updated in that respect. And so we're corresponding. Now they're asking us for areas where we think there'll be development or not development. So we actually are making some progress.
Fantastic, but that's for the state permit. We can still change our county.
No, that's for
code,
our
right?
county permit. That's actually our county permit that I have to update. And so so the state does permits, they call them MS4, but they issue permits to local agencies. And so I requested our county permit be updated in that respect. And so you get put on a list. And so we're actually in the queue to have our county permit updated.
So that'll change the storm event to allow for more precipitation?
TBD. It's the state. It's definitely more stringent, but I don't know the numbers because the state's still working on how they're going to issue that permit to the counties and cities. So, but it'll be more stringent than it is today.
Please let us know, because we'd like to have input.
Okay.
Thank you. Any public comment regarding these items before we come back to the commission?
You may approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes. Please state your name and the county in which you reside for the record.
My name is Barbara Snyder, and I live next door to those detention basins. To say that it doesn't impact the neighbors.
Ma'am, if you could speak to the microphone.
If you can, it affects the neighbors horribly. The dust, the exhaust, the noise, the fact that I didn't know that the subdivision was coming in, and I wanted to be a part of reshaping it for my community and for my rural residents there, and for myself. Be honest. I thought I'd be able to help plan what was going to be built there, and I had an end run done on me on the improvement plans. First, I want to make sure that this detention basin B, last year you added 200 homes, units 14 and units 15 to Santana Ranch, which is 200 houses, and they are all permitted already. Maybe just a handful haven't been permitted. They haven't all been built out yet, so we still haven't tested Basin B to actually hold the water that it's been redesigned for. There is no recorded map, so as far as pulling building permits for what's going in between the new residents, the improvement plans, there has been no recorded subdivision map yet, so there's nothing on the book that can be drawn out in the assessor's office and for them to be able to pull permits on. It has to record and be approved by the Board of Supervisors first. The other thing is I had a public records request that I put in October 2nd because I have been screaming about wanting to know whether or not the improvements next door actually were permitted, and I could not get any answers from the planning department, any document saying, here's my signature, these people can move dirt. Okay, so I had to file a public records request, of which I was delayed 3 times. I filed it on October 2nd. I started screaming in August. I was delayed. I didn't get it until December 1st, and the improvement plans weren't off the drafting desk until October 2nd. And then they weren't signed until October 5th, and then finally signed on October, I think it was 26th, 23rd, something between 23rd and the 26th. And that was when they were finally, and then now I'm being told I can't do anything to change the configuration of the development next door. I have 10 houses coming in on my fence line.
Thank you. We will continue to watch. Any other public comment regarding this item?
Yep, Bridget Bowman-Thorpe, please approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes.
Hi again. I actually have been to Barbara Snyder's property, and it's astounding how close they built to her property. And this retention basin that it releases the water into her property. I mean, the design is just, I don't know anything about stormwater runoff, but I'm looking at this is like, this is, in my opinion, designed from idiots, you know. It is just, I really have to say that, I mean, who are the engineers? This is absolutely astounding that something, such a developer, built 1,100 homes can even build something like this. And I feel Anderson should pay for all the damages that they caused to the neighbors, every penny of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
Maureen Nelson, please approach the podium. You will have 3 minutes.
I know, I just can't sit for long. I also live in Santana Ranch. I've also seen the flooding. I've also seen the movement of dirt, and it sort of astounds me that so much work is going on and so much movement is happening, yet we're told that it's not necessarily going on, that what we're seeing isn't happening at all, that the paperwork hasn't gone through. I understand that Anderson is a large developer for our county. I didn't know that when I moved here. I didn't know anything about Hollister when I moved here. I raised my kids in Santa Cruz. I moved to Boulder, Colorado for 21 years. Am I sorry that I moved into Santana Ranch? No, I'm not. But I think that Anderson Homes and Legacy Homes, who takes lots from Anderson, needs to be good community leaders, and they need to be held to standards. And I hope that our planning department does that they don't let them slide on requirements and regulations, that they hold their feet to the ground. If we want to have good communities and respected contractors, we need to demand it. We need to expect it. That's what any of us would want. And when you're infringing upon the health and safety of the community, of Barbara and her neighbors, and of the people who are going up and down Fairview, that road was flooded. It was a disaster, and it was a train wreck waiting to happen between 1, 2, and 4 cars. So please, let them build. Let them do what they're doing, but make sure they're building in accordance to regulations. We have them in this county. Let's make sure they see them and abide by them. And Steve, I hope that your department holds them to it too. I think that we all can do this. Thank you.
Thank you. Any additional public comment?
It doesn't look like I have any in chambers, and I see no hands via Zoom.
Okay, public comment is closed. Back to the commission. Any other comments or questions? Or Commissioner Scagliotti?
I have one question. When this was designed, why did they allow them to put houses right up against the property line? Why didn't we have a buffer back a couple hundred feet for a walkway or a park or something? Who allowed this to happen? Oh, you weren't here at the time.
I know.
Steve. I'm just
I can
frustrated.
say, I can give you the time. It was, let's see, the specific plan was in 2009, and then the tentative map was in 2012, I think. So I guess the folks that were making the decisions at that
What, they
time.
had their heads buried in the sand? Ridiculous. I feel bad for that lady.
Yep. Any other comments or questions, Commissioner Way?
Yeah, I'm just, I guess maybe this is a dumb question, but I don't understand why the state has apparently so much input into our own county's regulations in this regard. Is it the case that the county can't be more stringent than the state? Is that the problem? Or?
No, most projects, you have to comply with local and state jurisdictions. And to answer your question, the county could be, quote, more stringent, and so that's why I reached out to the state to make us, I'll say, more up to date and to try to help some of the issues that are going on. And there's no, we could be as stringent or not as stringent, I think, as a county chooses to be. So we're going towards being more stringent. The state has its own permit on the project, and so they actually have coordinated and done a lot of that correspondence between the developer and themselves, and then kind of brought us into the loop just over the last few years. But to answer your question, yeah, I'm curious to see what the state is suggesting for counties and cities for the new drainage requirements. And then we can always even be more stringent than that, but we just have to be a little bit careful because, you know, you can't make water just disappear. But we're heading towards having our own codes to be more stringent, so.
So you have highlighted 23.31.041. Isn't that something that we could change?
Yeah, it probably will. There's a very good chance that whole code section would change.
Sooner rather than later, or do we have to wait for the state to change our permit first?
Well, I think they're in the process of updating city county codes and permits, and so we should at least wait for their input, I think, to see what they think is good for counties and cities. And we could always go above and beyond that if we want, but yeah.
Okay, because when I spoke with them, I think it was last year, they said they're more concerned with quality than quantity, and they said they would support us being as stringent as we legally can, and I would certainly like to see that.
Understood, yeah.
Any other comments or questions from the commission before we?
I have one question.
Whoop, Commissioner Scagliotti.
What is the requirement for the city of Hollister? What is their requirement that they make hold back? What is the requirement for city of Hollister?
So
Because I see all these new developments putting in big holding ponds and, I mean, huge for small developments. What is their requirement for runoff?
Yeah, it's a great question. So that's the update the state's doing. They're already currently under an MS4 permit. Most cities in California are, you know, in various degrees, but they're already under what they call an MS4 permit, and it has, you know, some of those more water quality considerations and some volume considerations as well. But they just have the City of Hollister MS4 permit that was issued to them by the state. And the way the state does it, like for Santa Clara County, there's probably 15 cities that are under a city permit, MS4 permit that the state issued to them. And anyways, the City of Hollister has their own MS4 permit from the state.
Yeah, but what is the percentage requirement that they have to hold back on the site? Like a new project being built on Santa Ana Road, there's a huge retention pond there. What is that considered in percentages for holdback? Is it 20%, 50, 85%, 100% has to be kept on site? What is the percentage that has to be kept on site?
If you want, I don't want to misquote their permit.
Okay, just asking.
But I can bring that up when we have a future update. I'll bring up the city's permit and provide some of those numbers for you.
Thank you.
I just wondered what it was.
Commissioner Toledo.
So this is just a presentation. There's no direction, right? Okay. So, and I just, like, I want to be mindful that I'm not trying to attack Anderson Homes, but I want this developer and future developers to understand, you know, that's why we go through this process. So I'm sure they know that there could have been an error, but, you know, I don't have an Anderson home. I'm through a self-help program. So this is very important for the livelihoods of our citizens. So, yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Way, any last thoughts?
No, thank you.
I had a couple of last thoughts. 100-year storms, I hear that a lot. Like last year they said 100-year storm. The year before that they said 100-year storm. The year before that they said, is it a 100-year storm anymore? Or is it like he said, like more of a 10-year deal? So storms are getting stronger, I think. And secondly, I just wanted to say, I think your local rules and codes in regards to the state rules, the local rules have to be followed no matter what. If the state says this is, and you could be as stringent as you want to be. And I'm all for that. I think that in the case of Santana Ranch, and I just saying this from my own experience, the way these basins are undersized, first of all. The runoff at Santana Ranch is, everybody gets flooded, take a walk. It's unfortunate. I hope in the future we can do better. That's all I really have to
It's a
say
hope.
about that.
Noted.
Commissioner Scaliotti, any last?
No.
Nope. Okay, thank you very much. Next item, 6.3, department announcements.
Hi, Ariel Goodspeed, Principal Planner. Good evening, Chair and fellow Commissioners. I am back again to go over just a few department announcements. Going to go over a couple applications that was submitted between our last meeting, our last Planning Commission meeting, and this meeting. They're still under the 30-day review period, and I am filling in for Abraham's presentation tonight. So the first one, it's a minor subdivision. It's county file, PLN 230043. It's located at 756 Santa Ana Road. So just east of Highway 25 and then north of Santa Ana Road. It's a just over 32 acre parcel. The applicant submitted to divide it into two parcels, one being 1.65 acres and parcel 1, and parcel 2 being just 30.22 acres. Then there's going to be a dedication along Santa Ana Road, and that is the application. Our assistant planner, Jonathan Olivas, is going to be processing that application, so if there are questions, you can contact him. The next application is another minor subdivision, county file PLN 230042. It is located off of Los Vibros Road, so just about 1.4 miles east of Highway 156. For anyone that likes to go to the Christmas tree farm, it's that road. So the subdivision is an existing 22.53 acre parcel, and it's going to be subdivided into 4 lots. Lot 1 and 2 will be 5 acres, lot 3, 6.02 acres, and lot 4 will be 5 acres. This application is being processed by our assistant planner, Jonathan Livis, so if anyone has any questions on it, they can contact him. The next application, or last application for tonight, is a pre-application. So essentially someone's interested in doing it, so they submit a deposit to get agency comments and understanding of what would be required if they did a full submittal. This is an existing, it's all located 0.95 miles southeast of the Hollister Airport. It is just east of San Felipe, just north of Highway 125, and just south of McCloskey, along McCloskey Road. It currently has 14 modular homes, and they're approximately 109 square feet. The rest is existing 312 square foot site of farmland. The application would include a zone change from rural residential to residential mix to allow for the expansion of modular homes. It would also require general plan amendment from residential rural to residential multiple. And I believe it would add about 95 additional modular units onto that site. So again, it is a pre-application, so they can get feedback of what would be required if they were to do this project. And so this is going to be assigned to assistant planner Victor Tafoya. So if you have any questions on this application, you can contact our office there and ask for him. So that is it. Any questions on what's been submitted and coming through our county department?
No. Are there any staff announcements?
There is. Let me get to my next one. And then, before I go over, I was gonna go over our schedule, of what's coming way, but before, I go through, that, we do, have, a new, staff service specialist. Holly, do you wanna come introduce yourself, for the commission?
Hello, Commissioners. I'm Holly Strother. I'm a Hollister resident, and I came to San Benito County from Gavilan College, and so far it has been amazing. So,
Fantastic. Thank you. Welcome aboard.
Welcome.
So now back to business. What do we have on the agenda for January? Of course, we'll go over any new application received between now and January 17th. And then, of course, it's January, so we will set our commission calendar, our chair and vice chair. We'll go over ethics training that's required for commissioners. I will provide an update on the SALT grant that we've applied for. We will have a presentation from EDC finally on regarding the SEDS and just view of county business and friendliest to marketing. And I apologize, it's gotten rescheduled a couple times, but I was confirmed that they'll be here January. Steve Loop will have another presentation, discussion question to maybe look at an ordinance to limit new driveways on certain county roads, and what could be done. And then we do have our continuation of Garcia, which Jonathan will be presenting as the next item. And then Pierce, it's another minor subdivision, PLN 23007. And then we'll have PLN 220060. The Borland use permit will be coming back off of Old Hernandez Road. And then, as you heard in our public comment, we have the John Smith landfill coming at the end of January, back for decision on their EIR, their use permit, and their general plan amendment. Then in February, like we do every year, we have to submit to the state our annual progress reports of what we have accomplished with the general plan in the year of 2023, and same of what progress has been made for policies in our housing element. Currently estimated, we'll have 2 more minor subdivisions looking to be targeted for February, PLN 230014 Casillas and PLN 230024 Grimsley. Currently targeted is we adopted our zoning code last year. Since then, while we've been using it for the last year, there are a few items that we're going to do some cleanup. Once you, it's normal that as you use code, you find things that you might need to revise or update, and we did a huge overhaul updating the entire code, and it hadn't been comprehensively done in 40 years. So now that we're using it, there's a few items that we're going to do a little cleanup, and it is the department's goal to continuously be updating any codes on a regular basis, especially as there's continuous change in state law requirements as well. So just making sure that our department's always staying current, and that's about as far as we've kind of looked at for 2024. But there will be a lot more coming, I'm sure, and so we'll stay tuned.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Public hearing, item 7.1.
Good evening, Chair and Commissioners and members of the public. Tonight, staff will be requesting a continuation of PLN 230006 minor subdivision at 120 Enterprise Road. The reason for this request is that we have outstanding comments from Sunny Slope Water District and LAFCO. Therefore, staff recommends a continuation till the regularly scheduled meeting of the Planning Commission on January 17th, 2024 at 6 p.m.
Thank you. Is there any public comment for this item?
There is no public comment in chambers or via Zoom.
Thank you. Public comment is closed. Back to the commission. Is there any discussion, or is there a motion on the table to continue this item until the 17th of January?
I'll move to continue it.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. Next item.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Commissioners. Michael Kelly, Senior Planner. And I am just going to get set up right now. Here, okay. I am here to present a resolution on the new community study areas. The new community policy that's in the general plan and the study areas that are mapped for the plan, for the policy. Just as a refresher, here are the new community study areas as mapped. You see the San Juan study area, the Bolsa study area, the Union study area, and the Fairview study area. All areas that are a part of the new community policy that allows, it sets criteria for, well, expectations for what should happen if a new community, master plan type community were to be proposed. It's actually not limited to these areas, but the plan looked at these areas as the first likely or first potential location. Some history. September 13th, 2022 is when the Board of Supervisors initiated the amendment process for the general plan to eliminate or modify these study areas and the policy going along with it. There was particular emphasis on the Bolsa area, and in a way still is. And 2 weeks after this, the board also enacted an ordinance that put a moratorium temporarily on the general plan related and specific plan related applications that could come in during that time. That lasted about a year. April 19th, here at the Planning Commission was a presentation and discussion about the specific, the 4 specific study areas. Their physical constraints, other constraints like, well, one has a lot of easements on it as a constraint. And at that meeting, the commission generally expressed interest in just deleting these study areas from the plan. June 6th was a board and planning commission joint meeting in which a number of topics were presented, including the new community policy, and there too the feeling was to remove the study areas and to do it without delay. At around the same time, in May through July, was a comment period for governmental agencies and tribal representatives to comment on this. We sent out notice of this as state law requires when there is a general plan amendment, and asked if they had any concerns, any needs to address. And we did not receive any substantive comments, just thank you for sending this to us, or we have no comments, just no substantive comments on that. To look again at the study areas, here we have the Bolsa study area, which is along Highway 25 between Hollister and Gilroy. between the highway and the foot of the hills, or in the southern area, extending up into the hills there on the Bolsa. We also have the San Juan study area from San Juan Bautista in the east to where 101 exits San Benito County to the west, and the everything to the county line, up, including the higher elevations and also the lower areas near Rancho Larios and Rocks Road. A Fairview study area along Fairview Road, east of and north of Fairview Road, with largely parcels that are, many of them down to the 5-acre minimum, but other areas that are open and could conceivably be candidates for some kind of master plan community, just in a sense of physical availability of land and unconstrained land. And then Union study area on either side of Union Road, as it runs westward out of Hollister, and also over toward the southern area of the San Juan Valley, which is where the one implemented example, or nearly implemented example, of a new community is located, San Juan Oaks. Although it's not quite a new community in reality, it did use the new community policy as its in its finding when it was approved. But it was well underway in planning, long actually underway in planning by the time the new community policy came about, and it could very well have been done without the new community policy. So what's before you is a resolution that it's a planning commission resolution that inside it contains a board resolution. If you adopt it, you would be recommending that the board adopt this resolution that amends the general plan. It amends in particular the land use element, the economic development element, the natural and cultural resources element, and also the guiding principles and table of contents to reflect the changes. The edits are, well, the policy is pretty much in addition to and on top of all the other, in addition to all the other policies in the general plan. The other policies in the general plan really do not depend on the existence of the new community policy, and which made editing this document very easy, because it's basically just look at wherever the new community policy is and delete. It did not need redesigning other policies because they function without the new community. It's all still internally consistent after removing the new community policy. And so this would remove that policy and also the map designations that go along with it. The resolution also has findings that give the rationale for the amendment. A finding on does this comply with the state law on the required contents of a general plan, and also compliance with California Environmental Quality Act, CEQA. The first finding finds compelling reasons for amendment. It states these reasons: that it would allow discontiguous development away from existing development in Hollister and San Juan Bautista and elsewhere. State Route 25 and the arterials are seen as insufficient for the kind of development that's proposed. These developments would necessarily, if they were to happen, have to contribute to the road network in some way or another, but the highways are still seen as insufficient even with that. Jobs housing balance is an important goal, and these master plan communities are seen as being more housing than jobs, even though they are expected to have some level of commercial, possibly industrial, a little bit. But as it's seen as being more on the housing side, it is seen therefore as not so much in the favor of an improved jobs to housing ratio. Number of areas within the study areas have categories of important farmland, like prime farmland and grade 1 soil. Union and Fairview study areas have a lot of, as I showed before with Fairview, fragmentation, small lots where if some community were to happen, these lots would probably not be participating with the numerous owners. It would be just having to scrape together scraps of land to form a master plan community, and it's prohibitive. Other areas have a lot of slopes. In fact, much of the study area, land area mapped out, has a lot of slopes, and that would need a lot of intensive and possibly environmentally problematic earth moving. San Juan study area especially has what you see, the second point there, easements for conservation easements, open space, habitat, agricultural conservation easements, which are prohibitive toward the concept. And then finally, the sixth cycle regional housing needs allocation, which is it for our housing element update coming up, emphasizes that the growth should happen close to or adjacent or in Hollister, not away from it, and not remote, not on productive farmland either. The next finding is finding substantial compliance with the state requirements on what needs to be in a general plan. These rules apply all across the state in every jurisdiction. And so these have to do with the mandatory elements that are in the general plan. And this amendment would amend 3 mandatory elements on the topics of land use, conservation, and open space, which conservation and open space are represented by our natural and cultural resources element. And the finding basically says that all the pieces that need to be in there are still in there. And then you also see environmental justice mandatory element, which we don't have, and we don't actually need to have right now, but we need to make a finding. When 2 or more mandatory elements are amended, then we are required to adopt an environmental justice element if we have a disadvantaged community that meets the definition of disadvantaged community in the law, having to do with exposure to environmental hazards in part. But we don't have that community in this jurisdiction under that definition, so we're not required to have an environmental justice element. We just need to make a finding about it. So that's in the resolution. And then the last finding is in our addendum to the general plan environmental impact report. We have to find this action some way in compliance with CEQA. And the addendum says that the general plan EIR already answers the questions that need to be answered for this current action. It finds that no changes are so substantial, no changes to policy are so substantial, no changes in the circumstances around policy are so substantial, and no information that's new is so much of substantial importance that the EIR needs revision as a result of this. And a lot of this rationale comes from the fact that the EIR in 2015, as certified in 2015, studied the scenarios of both having and not having these study areas and the new community policy. That was studied and found basically the same mitigation in either case. So if we go to the other scenario of not having new community policy, the environmental impacts are mitigated, with some exception, but even in those exceptions, the Board of Supervisors at the time adopted the mitigations related to having no new community study areas and no new community policy. So that too has already been addressed. So let me see, just check one thing here. And also the new communities don't themselves enable development, or the EIR explicitly said it does not study the actual development that could result. It left that out and left that entirely to any proposal that comes along in the future. It left that analysis to the future. So no new, no revision to the EIR is needed as part of this. The addendum can satisfy the need to explain the environmental impacts of this. So staff recommends that the Planning Commission review the staff report for this action, hold this public hearing and hear any proponents and opponents of this proposed action, and adopt the resolution and its findings in order to recommend the general plan amendment that it be adopted by the Board of Supervisors. And I can help with any questions that you have.
Okay, we'll go to public comment first. Is there any public comment regarding this item?
I see no comment cards in chambers and no hands via Zoom.
Public comment is closed. Thank you. Back to the commission. Are there any comments or questions? Commissioner Way.
Yes, I'd like to drill into the Bolsa new community development area, study area, sorry. It appears as though, and I know I asked this at a previous meeting as well, but I just want to get reiteration of this. It either encompasses or at least overlaps the area that would be developed if the so-called Strata Verde Development Innovation Park were to proceed. Is that correct as far as the mapping?
As I understand it, the footprint of the Strata Verde proposal is in the Bolsa study area, yes.
Okay. Does the removal of the new community study area make it have any impact upon the ability, the ease with which the Strata Verde project could or could not be developed? In other words, if the new community study area were still in place, would it be harder to develop Strata Verde? Would it be easier? If we removed it, would it be easier? Would it be harder? Or is there really no impact?
The any new community or master planned development would have to meet the criteria of the new community policy, and as I understand it, the Strata Verde proposal is a pretty different concept from what the new community policy envisions. So it's kind of like what I was saying about all the other, removing the new community policy is just a matter of deleting all references to new community, and everything else is there in the general plan. This would just follow the rest of the general plan. It could still be considered independently of new community policy.
So if the new community study area were still in effect, that wouldn't pose an impediment to the development of Strata Verde, so removing it doesn't remove an impediment.
This new community, the new community study areas are, yeah, I'd say it's not an impediment per se to something like Strata Verde. It's not a land use designation like you see the A for agriculture or 5 acre minimum or industrial districts. It doesn't quite regulate like that. It sets criteria, and really these new communities could happen anywhere outside these bubbles too, if it makes sense for the criteria that are listed. It's just that these are the kind of the first ideas that came to mind upon the drawing up of the plan.
Okay, thank you. I just have a tendency to be paranoid a little bit. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions from the commission? Commissioner Toledo.
On the slide you mentioned Buena Vista. I can't seem to find it, but and a few other roads not having a new driveway, right? So
that was a different item.
Oh, okay, sorry about that.
Okay. So do we have a motion on the table to adopt the resolution with findings? And that resolution would recommend from the Planning Commission to the Board of Supervisors that they adopt an amendment to the general plan for deletion of new community study areas from the San Benito County General Plan, including the maps. Is there such a motion on the table?
I'll make the motion.
I'll second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. Thank you. And that's it. Okay, so we finished. Fantastic. Is there a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion, we adjourn.
I second.
All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed? Hearing none, motion carries 5-0. We are adjourned. Have a Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year, everybody, and we'll see you on the 17th.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Thank you.